Miss Michaela can't do this because she's disabled, or Miss Michaela can't do this because she's stupid. Hi guys, so today I am filming a video talking about discrimination in the workplace. Now before I start, I would like to send out a disclaimer that anyone that was involved in this, any people, places, minors that were involved in this, I'm not sharing specific details. I will not use pseudonyms or anything. I'm just going to state they, them, and go from there. Another disclaimer is that I'm not doing this because I'm mad at the people who did these things. I'm just sharing this because I want other people to be able to have someone to, I don't know, like have someone to empathize with, I guess, or know that they're not alone. So when I was in high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I decided one day that I wanted to work in childcare. So I decided that I was going to go to college for early childhood education. When I was applying for college, I noticed that the college I had picked had a daycare on campus, and I thought that was a great idea. So while I was on campus for a summer transition program, I interviewed for the position at the daycare, and I did get the job. Now, I started off in the infant room, seeing as though I worked with infants and toddlers in the past, and I had done really well with them, and parents were usually pretty happy with how I did. So I worked in the infant room for my very first semester in 2017. In 2017 was also when we started to notice that my POTS symptoms started to flare up. So I would constantly be having issues getting up and down, changing positions. I'd have issues with my fibromyalgia, trying to do the dishes. It was harder to lift kids. And there were times where I almost fell on a couple kids, and that was really scary and frustrating. At the end of the semester, I said to my boss that I was going to switch classrooms up to from the infants to the 1 to 2 year olds, right in that range. So at the end of that semester, I had requested to change classrooms to the young toddler classroom. In winter of 2018, I ended up starting a medication that caused my, what we now know as POTS, to completely flare out to the point that I ended up in the ER. It was really frustrating and scary, and so I took a couple days off of work to try to figure out what testing needed to get done and everything. I started in the young toddler classroom. Now, I still had issues with being dizzy all the time and having issues getting up and down. And the first couple weeks in that young toddler classroom, I was okay. The people that I was working with were okay with me when I made mistakes sometimes. They were really patient in that first couple weeks. After a couple weeks, we did find out that I had POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, and they were able to start me on some medication. As the semester went on, however, my coworkers and my lead teacher became harder on me, even though after my diagnosis, I went and told both my supervisor and my lead teacher, hey, these are the conditions I have, this is how it's going to make it hard for me to work in the classroom. Doesn't mean that I don't love working in the classroom, it just might make my ability to do some of these tasks more difficult. However, I was still held to the high expectation of these need to get done at the same time and at the same pace as able-bodied people, and so that became really frustrating. Also, what became really frustrating is that coworkers decided that they would take advantage of me and my disability, and so they would make me do things that had either already been done or weren't supposed to get done, or they were supposed to be doing, and they would, when I would do those things for them, they would sit and talk and gossip, and I would continue to do my work, even though they decided they weren't going to do it anymore. There were a couple coworkers that ended up coming up to me and going, I'm so sorry, I can't believe this is happening, let me know if you need anything. But my lead teacher and my supervisor never saw it. And because of this, when I would go to them, they would just tell me to leave them alone. Because these coworkers were asking me to do things that I wasn't supposed to be doing, or telling me I wasn't doing things right, I started second guessing basic things such as children's routines and things that people normally would logically be able to process. So, for example, trying to keep in line with licensing and things like that, confidentiality rules, etc. After that first semester, I ended up moving up with the kids to the next classroom, which was the older toddler classroom. And these things, all of these things with the coworkers and the lead still continued. It was very frustrating. I also worked some of the time in the early preschool classroom, and usually I had a pretty good time in there, and it was a lot easier than being in the older toddler classroom. However, there did become a point where my supervisor, one day when I said to my supervisor that I was having heat intolerance issues and I couldn't work outside that day, I felt like I couldn't breathe, I felt like I was gonna throw up, I felt like I was gonna faint. I said, I just need to work inside, please let me work inside. The supervisor responded to me and said, if you're not able to work, then you shouldn't work at all, which is a frustrating statement, because just because I'm not able to do some things does not mean that I'm not capable of working. I ended up biting my tongue and going outside and sitting and being really dizzy, and I had some really concerned coworkers come up to me and asked if I was okay or if I needed anything, and I said I'm just really frustrated and I can't breathe and I just need to sit. Some of the worst parts of this was that it makes me emotional sometimes to think about it, and I'm sorry if I'm not looking at the camera, but some of the discrimination happened in front of the kids, to the point where they would say, oh, Miss Michaela can't do this because she's disabled, or Miss Michaela can't do this because she's stupid, or Miss Michaela can't do this because she's lazy, or things like that. Maybe not exactly those words, but basically to that point. And there were so many things, like I tried to ask my coworkers for help when my fibromyalgia was flaring up, and they would always like groan and roll their eyes and then do some of it, but then they'd ask me to do it again. But basically most of the time I did all of the chores while the kids were sleeping, and then I would, the other coworkers would sit there and chat while I did all the work. And usually by the end of my shifts I would be in a significant amount of pain, which would definitely affect my academics. I tried so hard to ask for feedback, ask what I was doing wrong, because I would constantly be told that I wasn't doing things right by my lead teacher and my other coworkers. So I would constantly be asking, I'd say, what am I doing wrong? How can I fix it? Please someone tell me what's wrong. And I asked for feedback so often that it almost became embarrassing, you know. There was a point where I was working over the summer where my anxiety definitely got really high. I'm not really good with commuting, and one summer I chose to commute, and there was some severe weather that had freaked me out a little bit, and I was trying to tell my boss that it was making me uncomfortable to drive so far, and that my anxiety was really high in the classroom because of it, and they asked me if I should just stop working. And I said, well, maybe until the school year starts. And they were asking me, like, do you believe that you're gonna be like a lead teacher? And I was like, yeah, but like I can't see that right now. And I think that definitely changed how my supervisor saw me, because I couldn't really see past my anxiety, which is my fault. The hard part about this whole situation was that I asked them, I said, what accommodations are there for me? Like, can I be sitting longer? Can I wheel around in a chair? Is there a stool I can bring everywhere? How can we accommodate this? Like, can I sit in one part of the room and just stay there? Like, what can we do? And they said, there's no accommodations for you. And even later in the year with that situation that that I needed to be inside due to my heat intolerance, they said, well, you don't have an accommodation for this. And I said, well, you didn't offer any. So that was definitely really frustrating. I'm a huge advocate for children, and I have so much passion for working with children that just working at this daycare made it impossible for me to want to continue a career in education, just because of the fact that it was so hard to stand there and be discriminated by my peers and my supervisor and my lead teacher, people that were supposed to be supporting me and helping me through my journey in my degree for education, that it just became impossible. I looked for another job, and luckily I was accepted at the computer lab on campus, which honestly was the best decision I could have ever made for myself. And in August of 2019 I was able to leave the daycare. Now, I'm not sharing this because I'm mad. I am pretty mad, but I'm not sharing it because I'm trying to rub it in their faces. I'm not sharing this for the school that I go to be like, oh crap, let us open some legal battle, or let's just dig this all back up again, because that's not what I want. What I want is to be able to share my story and for other people to be like, hey, you know, something similar happened to me. I want people to know that they're not alone in this. Like I said before, I'm a huge advocate for children. Children should not be exposed to discrimination. Children should be, you would hope that in a daycare setting where you should have a diverse amount of people there, including disabled people, because disabled people are capable of working at a daycare just as much as anybody else. I believe that if you have a diverse amount of different workers at your daycare, I think a big thing to teach the children is that there are different types of people, and not everybody you meet is going to look the same way as you, which definitely gets into like race and gender and sexuality and being disabled, because not everybody's gonna be in a wheelchair. Some disabled people don't use wheelchairs, they use rollators, walkers, etc. I think it's really important for kids to understand that there are lots of disabled people all around us. I do not believe that children should ever be exposed to discrimination at that young of an age. I feel so sorry for the children that were exposed to discrimination because I was working there, and I feel really bad for their parents that their kid was exposed to that harassment. Don't ever teach your kids to bully people. But like, also like, make sure they're not learning it at daycare either. I did try to go to HR about this, however, they claimed that I didn't have enough evidence and sent me away. It was rough, and if you have a similar story, feel free to comment below. As I've been saying in my last couple videos, I don't really do negative comments, and because this situation was so sensitive, I will be deleting any negative comments just because I can't mentally handle it. It was hard enough for me to come out and talk about this, so it's even harder to see people that are speaking negatively about it. But please, if you have also had a situation like this, especially on a college campus, feel free to comment below. I will respond to the comments, and thanks for listening to my story. Bye.